Today, we are going to be seeing if TikTok is a good, reliable source for mortgage and real estate content. I've compiled about 7 different videos. Some are good, I think, and some are questionable. Some of these have gone viral mainly for the fact of, I think it just spurs a lot of conversation, but I am here to dive deep as a mortgage loan originator and see if everything here checks out. So let's get into the first video.
So I have a friend of mine whose brother is in the process of buying a new construction home out here in Georgia. And I met up with him last week and he told me that he was going through something crazy throughout his process and that he wanted to reach out to me for advice about what next steps that he should take. And of course, I told him he could. So he gave me a call and he broke down the whole situation to me. They started the process of building their new construction home back in early this year, February. And initially, when they started the process with the lender that the builder referred them or is working with, interest rates were in the low to mid 6s, and they were basing their financial situation based off those interest rates. And initially, with those rates, he was comfortable with the monthly payment, and obviously, the builder will give you an incentive if you work with their preferred lender, which in this case, the builder was willing to give them $10,000 if they work with their preferred lender.
It's so frustrating. I had a buddy, I won't say his name, but essentially he purchased a new build prior to it being built. And at the time, the rates were in the 5s. And this is what was frustrating about it. He was told that it was locked, but it was his first time. He didn't know what he was doing, and he probably didn't get a loan estimate. Figured out once the home was built, he already put a deposit down. Then he realized that then the loan officer comes back and says, hey, we're actually at 7.25, but we'll give you the incentive. We can buy it down a little bit, not even close to what they're quoting. This happens and you hear about it all the time, but I think there's a little bit more to this story here.
Now, here's where the problem starts. The lender wasn't able to lock in that initial 6% interest rate that he quoted them because the lender cannot lock in the rate until the home is actually completed. So now we're in late October, early November, and the home is finally completed. But the problem is interest rates have changed, and by a lot. So now they're quoting him a rate in the mid to high 7s.
They roll it out. They give you all the options. They take you into the office and they give you the models and they give you the potential upgrades that you can do. Just wait until it's actually built, because at the end of the day, they need to get that unit sold. The longer they have that listed, the longer that it takes for them to sell, the less money that they're going to make, the more money that's being burnt in their pocket. So wait until the property's actually built, not prior to, because when they lock you in, they got you. They got you. That you put your deposit in, you're waiting 6 months, and now there's all this excitement, and then they drop things on you at the last minute. It's bizarre. I don't know why they set up this way, and it seems to be only builders. I'm sure there's good builders out there, but I've heard of so many stories and dealt with personal stories on the new build side to where what's being led on to in the very beginning and to what actually happens when it's actually built, it's a whole different story. I would say almost 90% or more of the time.
Obviously, his payment has jumped up astronomically and he wasn't prepared for that. So he came to me and asked me, was there any other options that he could do or take advantage of in order to get that interest rate down in order to be at a more manageable monthly payment? And I tell him, sure, you can use that $10,000 that the builder is giving you to buy down your interest rate.
Yeah, allocate it to, and that's the best you can do, right?
Whether that be a fixed rate or a temporary buy down of the interest rate. My friend's brother proceeds to tell me that that lender said that their credit score is too low in order for them to buy down the interest rate.
That's a bunch of bull. That is a straight up lie. They had to have qualified them on their credit score initially. And also, there's no credit score limitation to being able to buy down your interest rate. There's no minimum. Like, for instance, if you're below a 660, that doesn't mean you can't buy down your rate. If you qualify credit-wise, you can always buy down your rate. So if you ever hear that, let's just keep watching the video.
That does not make any sense. And y'all tell me in the comments if y'all could see exactly why that lender told them that they couldn't use that $10,000 that they were getting from the seller to buy down the interest rate. So pause this loan estimate and tell me if you can see it.
There it is. 3.25% of the loan amounts. They're charging 3.25 points. It's more than $10,000. It's over $11,000 for that So they are buying it down for one. When you see points, that means you're buying the rate down or there's an associated fee to that rate. Let's just use the example. Let's just say today you qualify at 7.5, but in order to get down to a 7.25% interest rate, there's going to be a 1 point cost. It's going to be 1% of the loan amount. So if the loan amount's $500,000, 1% of that would be $5,000. That would be added to your total closing costs. So, and here the lender is charging 3.25% of the loan amount. That's crazy. So essentially they're steering to the highest degree, which is totally illegal. And I would 100%, I would report them immediately. I would report them to state and federal level immediately, just because that is just a bunch of bull.
If they decide that they want to walk away from buying this new construction home because they don't like the way this is set up, they are out of $15,000.
Yeah.
So I proceeded to go ahead and run the numbers for him myself. I have him do an application, pull his credit, collect all documentation, and realize that I could give him a better interest rate, charge him a fraction of the amount that they're charging him in origination fees so that he could buy down his interest rate by 2% of his qualifying rate for the first year and 1% from his qualifying rate for the second year for a temporary buy down if the seller is still willing to give him that $10,000. But guess what? The builder, who is the seller, won't give him that $10,000 if he decides to go and use an outside lender. So again, I ask, how is that not unethical?
That's called steering. You're steering them to use someone in particular. You'll give them this if you do this, but if you go over there, I won't give you that.
These builders will go ahead and control all aspects of the process, as far as the realtor that you use, the attorney that you use, the inspector that you use.
That's another thing too. They're going to try and cut the real estate agent out immediately. What they'll do is they'll have them sign on the dotted line when they walk into the office. The buyer has no idea what they're signing in, and pretty much what they're doing is they're saying that I am giving up my right for real estate representation. And then they feel like they're being represented on their end because they don't want to have to pay a 2.5% fee to a real estate agent. And then they can use that 2.5% fee to then give more incentives. The lender can have a lot more of a charge to the rate, and it all comes out to be the same. The lender makes more money on the actual servicing of the loan and the rate, and also the fee that's associated with that rate. So it's just wait for it to be built. It's going to be built. There's already plans for it. There's an office there that's selling them pre-built. They're going to be built. There's ones that aren't going to be bought. So I would wait till then. Use a realtor, because at the end of the day, they're going to try and steer you in the fact of mentally that you cannot do any requests for repairs because it's a new build. It's brand new. You shouldn't have to do any requests for repairs. You should absolutely be able to. You are able to, as a buyer, to be able to do inspections on a new build. And if there's anything that pops up that needs to be addressed, you can absolutely request repairs. And if they tell you otherwise, it's hooey. It's quite literally your right to ask for any request for repairs and doing a final walkthrough. There's been times to where I've had agents to where they did a final walkthrough and there's a doorknob was missing or some trim was completely battered. It wasn't in the original condition. So use a loan officer that you trust. And at the end of the day, if they're offering a certain incentive to use their certain lender, you should have that loan officer talk to that builder and figure out why they're giving that incentive to a lender that is to them and not them. Because at the end of the day, what I would do is so are you telling me that you're steering them to where you would give it to them and not me? Can you explain why? Legally? And if they fumble, then most likely they're going to give me the same incentive. If any builders are watching this, we want to work with you, but you make it so dang hard to like you. Make it easier for outside lenders to work with you. Establish a good relationship from the start and urge people to bring their agents to work with them. Because when you cut them out, you're then cutting out a relationship, and then you're creating a mass mob of real estate agents and loan officers that do not like new builds. But guess what? We're all advocates for brand new or for more real estate, affordable housing, and more real estate that's available to purchase, because everyone wants to buy a home. We need you, but we want to like you, but give us a reason to like you. So that's my spiel on new builds.
What questions do I need to ask a lender when I'm in the process of searching for a home? First, let's address the first thing. Number one, you should check with at least 3 lenders within a 14-day window?
No. Right out the gate, no. 14 days is quite a long time in the lending world. For one, I hear a lot of agents talking about this. I hear a lot of agents that are referring to 3 lenders. And I understand where they're coming from, but they also don't really understand what they're doing. Because if you're working with a first-time home buyer and you are sending them off to 3 different lenders, unless you know them personally and have worked with them and closed them personally, and you know how they work, well, even with that, if a first-time home buyer talks to 3 different loan officers, they're most likely going to come out of that more confused than they started. The route to take as a first-time home buyer is going to be having a phone consultation or a Zoom consultation, and then sending over a needs list of documentation, fill out a loan application, and pull credit. And from there, you're going to establish a budget from there, and then you put them off on their merry way. So at the end of the day, I think that what they're trying to do is they're trying to leverage that opportunity to see if they have other different programs. But most people fit in the FHA or conventional box if they have a down payment. Most lenders have down payment assistance out there. I know every broker will, and if you don't, you're just very lazy because you just need to get set up with one. I'll give you an example. I had one client where I had him set up with an FHA loan. He had a big down payment, but it was a credit score issue. And I broke it down as to why we're going FHA and not conventional. You can go a little bit higher on your budget with an FHA loan. And also your interest rate is going to be a lot less affected with a lower credit score. So he can also, the payment and how much he can qualify for yield him a better result. So that's why he went FHA. Another lender told him he can go conventional. Yeah, you can go conventional, but you're going to be far lower in what you can qualify for. And what they were making an offer on was a home that was probably $150,000 outside of what the conventional loan budget would be. The buyer took their word for it. They heard what they wanted to hear. And some loan officers out there will do that. And a lot of them come from banks, credit unions. Not all. There are good. I know a lot of good. But when it comes down to it, there's some loan officers out there that will say what you want to hear. And if you are hearing exactly what you want to hear, most likely you're going to go with them or trust them initially. So what happened was they submitted their offer as a conventional loan, and I was involved in the pre-approval process. And then they told me last minute, like, hey, we found another loan that can do conventional. And I told the agent, I'm telling you, even at the rate that they're quoting, they're not going to qualify at that price point. I'm telling you, I have his numbers right here. And the listing agent quite literally told the agent, said, if this turns into an FHA offer, we will not accept any requests for repairs. 2 weeks later comes by, it ends up this credit union, I won't even mention their name, they pretty much told them that, oh yeah, we ran their credit and got his income. I'm like, so how much due diligence was done here? His credit report wasn't even pulled. Income was not even verified. So essentially, they had to switch to FHA. The deal blew up. The buyer stuck with me like glue after that because I was upfront about everything. And you can tell if people are going through many different options, they're not pushing rate immediately. They explain to you what goes into the rate, breaks it down as to see this payment, see this cash to close, which is your down payment plus your closing costs. That's your cash to close. That needs to be described. Work with someone that was referred to you by someone that you trust. That's usually going to be an agent, and sometimes it's a parent. I have that all the time. Just make sure that they are in good communication with the real estate agent. But 3 lenders, I think, is a little much. I can understand too, especially if you're going between a bank and a broker. Especially with an FHA loan, my rate will probably be far lower. With an FHA loan, conventional will be a lot tighter. It'll be a lot closer in comparison. You can tell if someone's good and is going to go above and beyond within the first call. Truly, you can tell. If someone's ambitious, ready to go, offers their ability to be available after 5 o'clock until like 9 p.m. at night. It's always answering their phone. They're on top of it. They're just on it. Just work with them. Seriously, that will make the world of difference. Trust me.
That way, when the lenders are actually pulling your report, it's going to be pulled under one credit type. So you will only have one hit on your credit bureau report, one inquiry. The second thing, when you're talking to lenders and you're trying to figure out whom you should apply with, and whom can possibly offer you the best loan, there are a top 5 questions that I would ask. Question number 1, what type of loans do you offer? Do you offer FHA? Do you offer conventional? Do you offer VA? Do you offer USDA? Because there's basically 4 loan types and different products that lenders offer on top of those loan types.
Yeah. But every lender offers those. It's the lender's job to ask the questions to be able to then educate. And it also depends on if they're a first-time home buyer. If they're a third-time buyer, you're working with an investor, you're working on a person they've gone through the process once, but it was prior to 2010. There's so many different situations, and the loan officer is the advisor. I'm the advisor. I'm getting on the phone with you. We're talking about your situation. We're talking about your financial situation. Where are you at right now? And it'll be abundantly clear if you need to do down payment assistance. And guess what? If that loan officer is working with a lender that does not offer down payment assistance, they'll tell you if they're good, if they're honest. Most are if they're at this point now. But down payment assistance will be figured out in the initial phone call. You know it immediately. So I appreciate where she's going with it, asking the lender questions. I guess from my perspective, I don't think about it from like, I'm just going to like say I have it and then figure it out later. Maybe loan officers do that, but at least give 3 top options without confusing the buyer. That's our job, is to help them guide the lowest payment, which yields them the best result and the best terms. What's my payment? What's my cost? Lowest payment, lowest cost, right?
The second question is, what would my interest rate and annual percentage rate be? That will really affect how much you're paying each month on your mortgage.
I get this question all the time. What's your interest rate? That's a loaded question, because are we talking about an FHA loan? Are we talking about a conventional loan? Are we putting 5% down, 10% down? Or is our credit score 760? Is it 702? Is it 622? There's so many variables to consider. You start talking about interest rates when you start narrowing it down to pretty much like 2 options, because you're talking about payment and associated cash to close. And then from there, you can see what the interest rate is, and then the associated APR. APR is a fancy way of saying that it's articulating that there's costs associated with that loan. So it's factored into the loan. I think it's a silly metric. It has nothing to do with your payment. It's a way of advertising to show that there's associated fees with the loan. The APR percentage is if it were to be wrapped into the loan and financed into it over time on a year by year basis. So APR is just pretty much for advertising purposes. And that was a 2010 thing as well, because there was a lot of hidden fees prior to 2010.
Do I qualify for any special programs or discounts? This is very important, especially when we're talking about, how much you're going to be bringing to the closing table, which directly leads me into my next question. What will be the estimated closing costs? Not only ask what will be the estimated closing costs, also ask if there are any lender credits that can be given to you to help towards the closing.
Yeah, you can ask that for sure. Let's just say your interest rate is 7.5 and 7.25. It costs you $5,000. Just using that as an example to buy it down. It costs you $5,000 for a 7.25% interest rate. It's not an accurate quote, just using it as an example. So the opposite, if you go up to 7.75, maybe it gives you $2,000 back. Essentially, the lender's communicating that, hey, if you take a higher rate, we'll give you some money back towards your closing costs. So in this environment with rates being so much higher, you don't see that very much, because at the end of the day, it comes down to what's my lowest payment. A lot of the time, just a bit edges out what's my overall cost in terms of weighing the difference. We saw it a ton when the rates were super low, because there's no cost to it. It was 2.5%. You go up to 2.75 and get like $1,200 back. Sure, that's great, especially if you're a first-time homebuyer, things are tight. The payment's already low, might as well lower the closing cost. But we just don't see it as much in this lending environment, just because the rates are a lot higher. I hope you guys found this helpful and insightful, and I'm looking forward to doing more of these. And I hope you guys all have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you in the next video.